The Smoking Ape.
And we're live. Look who joined in just a nick of time. My good friend
Yeah.
Chuck. How you doing, buddy?
Good. I'm pushing my time here.
Well, let's talk about this real quick. So I was talking to my wife beforehand, and she's like, "So you're streaming on a Friday night?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she goes, "Who are you streaming with?" And I said, "Uncle Chuck. What do you think?" And she's like, "Well, what's the show on?" And I was like, "Seriously?" She try to guess.
Seriously?
And then she goes, "Antennas." I was like, "Yeah, that's exactly right."
I may have lost mine because I hit the wrong button starting this thing up. I was in a hurry.
Starting what up?
My computer. Yeah,
Well,
I think I
you're
lost
on
you.
you're on and you're live right now, son.
No. I was looking for the stuff you sent me.
Oh, I got it, so don't worry.
But it looks
And
like my
hello and welcome
computer
to
reset.
everybody
Hey, y'all.
in the chat. Hope everybody's doing well. So what we wanted to do is a video on antennas because we like antennas and we're nerdy like that. And I wanted to do something around building antennas and some stuff like tips and tricks and just talk about the little different things that come along as you're building antennas. So I figured I would get the help of the internet's best antenna builder, Chuck. And so he's here with me. We have a couple.
Whatever.
We have a couple of slides that we're going to go through, mainly as talking points. And let me just get to the comments real quick because my good friend Hayden over here. Thank you, Hayden. Member of
Hey,
40 months. He might be the longest tenured member that we have.
Yeah.
I'd have to go back and take a look. But yeah, we're streaming on a Friday, so it's just the way the stars lined up this time.
I think I don't know. I had a couple of different people streaming, but I don't know when that was.
The other night, I think it was like Wednesday night, I looked, and there was like 6 hams streaming all at the same time. You can't keep track of it anymore. And
No.
GFO Dale, glad to hear, buddy. Oh, here we go. There's 3 simultaneous live streams. We got Josh at Pacificon, Mike N2MAK, and me. It'll
Josh
be good,
is
Lee.
at Pacificon?
I guess that's what Lightning Lee's saying.
Hmm.
So let's jump in and talk a little bit about what we've got going on. So, like I mentioned, we wanted to talk a little bit about antennas, specifically wire antennas. So I've done a lot of videos, not a lot. I've done a few videos lately talking about things like velocity factor and bandwidth as a outcome of wire diameter. I did a video yesterday about copper-clad aluminum wire, and I would expect more wire type antennas videos and then more transmission line videos. But so this is just kind of a continuation in that theme. And and the main reason that I want to have Chuck here is Chuck and I both, we like to build our antennas. It's not that we shame anybody for buying an antenna. If you buy an antenna, that's great. At least you have an antenna.
Right.
But we're kind of like in the mindset where a lot of the antenna manufacturers grossly overstate the performance capabilities of their antennas, and they charge a fortune for what you're actually getting.
Right.
And build quality is often suspect at best. So for us, we kind of think our duty is to go ahead and help folks learn about antennas, learn how to build them, and save a little bit of money. So that's kind of the premise here. And what I have is building your own wire antenna for HF is a rewarding aspect of amateur radio. Not only does it allow for customization to fit your specific needs and environment, but it can be a cost-effective way to enhance your radio setup. And when we talk about HF bands, we talk about 1.8, 1.5 megahertz, all the way up to 30 megahertz. And that covers everything. Now, I don't typically go that low. I think, Chuck, you go down to about 80 meters, right?
Yeah. I used to be on 80 a lot. But the group kind of it got to where the bands were getting bad and the group just kind of went away, and I just never went back. I don't know if they're still there or not.
What about 160? You ever do anything there?
I did 160. When I had my 40 meter half square up, for some reason that thing would tune up on 160.
Hey,
and I did a contest one night. I was doing contest stuff, and it was amazing how well it did. People couldn't believe that I was on what I was on.
Well, that's what you always get, though, right?
Yeah, my signal reports were really good for what it was. I mean, But you think about it, it was a lot of half square is it's on 40 is it's a basically a dipole and then a vertical hooked together, right?
Yeah, it's a
So
big antenna.
quite a bit of wire, quite a bit of wire.
Well, see, I mostly just
Bumps
play
here.
in this space from like 40 through 10.
Mhm.
Just being honest, and that makes it a lot more manageable. I don't have a large estate here, and I'm ruled under the oppressive HOA, so I have to kind of be a little bit careful what I put out in the backyard.
I do have quite a bit of room here. That's the reason I did up my my tower and stuff. It's actually quite a ways away from my house, so my runs are long. So we'll talk about that later in your slides.
Nunya's asking if we can point to the loss values between LMR 240 and RG8X, and loss values are dependent upon frequency. And so what I would suggest, and I'm not trying to put you off, is just Google coaxial attenuation or coaxial loss chart. And there are dozens of them on the internet that will give you a frequency band. And they'll say like from 30 megahertz to 50 megahertz, this much attenuation per 100 feet. And so what you're going to have to do is kind of back into a calculation there. Like if you have a 50-foot cable, then typically you would divide by 2. But
Right.
that should get you where you need to go. Yep. And then GFO Dale says DX Engineering has a PDF, and I'm pretty sure that they've got that.
Yeah, you
So-
just it depends on what band. Really, a lot of it depends on what band you want to run. If you run the higher band, you need better coax, right?
Yeah.
The lower bands, and if you have long runs, you need better coax than short runs, stuff like that.
Well, I got to tell you, I use RG8X for almost everything.
That's what I was going to talk about on your thing. You said feline coaxial. Now I would run RG8 or was it 213? Unless it's pretty.
Hey,
I just
Tim.
had three different things pop up at once for shows.
For live streaming that's going on right now.
Well, actually, yeah, Josh. Well, that's old, but yeah, I got us and Mike's doing it. Yeah, 8X is good. I like 8X for portable stuff for most of the time, for especially if I'm doing parks on the air or something like that, because it's easy to manage. But I bought some LMR 400 one time. It was actually what's the stuff that we have the code for?
Oh, you're talking about
ABRs, ABR,
Yeah, the ABR guys in Texas.
and it was the flexible stuff. And I tell you what, that stuff, other than being bigger, was probably as easy to handle as 8X.
Well, I've got
folded
some
up really nice.
RG74, which is like that super thin stuff that I might use if I do something portable. And then somebody was asking on here, I lost it. Somebody's asking about, oh, here it is, RG316. And RG316 is that really thin Teflon stuff.
Yeah, I got some here.
Here we go, this stuff, right? And I use a lot of this for jumpers in the ham shack. And I also have a piece of this. It's about, I think it's 25 feet. It might be longer. I don't know, maybe 50. And I use that sometimes when I go portable. You get more
I've got that
losses
for
in those
portable.
in those smaller cables. But
Now,
I mean, loss is something that we all deal with, and it's just you have to determine. There you go. That looks like the
this is
400,
the 400.
Right?
This is the 400. Now, Javi has a friend of ours that, well, he knows him better than I do, but he does a lot of POTA, and he was down there in Quartzsite with us, and this is what he uses for QRP and SOTA stuff.
Well, I love that wire, but that
It's
is
really,
not.
I mean, really good for that.
I would be surprised if somebody would use that portable because that stuff is rigid as heck.
Yeah, it's not the most well, and the 316 is hard to. You have to really have it laid out nice and straight so it'll turn when you wind it. I don't do the fancy winds or anything like that. If you lay your stuff out straight, it usually winds pretty good.
Hey, Taryn, I don't recognize your name in there, but thanks for being here, buddy. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
there's
if you're
always
only going
one.
50 feet, RG8X is fine.
It's fine. RG8X, I recommend it to everybody. Now, be
I have a
careful where you
bunch
buy
of-
your RG8X because there's a lot of fake and phony BS gas station, Amazon, eBay RG8X that might not be what it's all cracked up to be.
I have a I have at least two 50-footers that I use a lot, and there are the ABR from I think I got that at HRO sells that, and I have a HRO that's it was closer than it is now, but fairly close to me. If I'm visiting my daughter, it's like 10, 15 minutes from her house, so that's nice.
Yeah, it is
And better
nice.
parking. Oakland was terrible for parking. You guys,
Hollywood saying he
never
likes his
been there.
600. There's always one of these open wire feed line
Yeah, it
guys.
depends. It depends on what you're feeding, right?
Yeah. So like the thing is like building antennas can be somewhat intimidating at first, but it really isn't that complex to start off pretty simply. You don't need much, right? So we have a little bit of a list here of copper wire, or you can get copper clad aluminum. Keep in mind there's some nuance there. I just did a video kind of helping folks out with that. I like insulated wire. Some people choose not to use that. I find it to be a
I do
little bit
too.
more durable, easier to handle. At the ends of your antenna elements, we use something called an insulator. And you can use just about anything. I'm a little white trashy, so I use zip ties all the time. But you can buy insulators for like electric fences and stuff like that at like Tractor
Yeah.
Supply and stuff like that.
You know what I use a lot on my portable antennas is just the really like 1/8 inch. What's the this stuff here? But the
Oh
really
yeah,
small
the
stuff.
paracord, or is that the
Paracord. It's
mastic?
paracord. No,
what's
that's
the other stuff?
paracord there. The other stuff I've got that too, but that stuff's really stiff compared to paracord. But I use the 1/8 inch paracord. It's tiny, and it's all you need. It's still plenty strong enough, but it rolls up nice too.
I use this
fact,
stuff called bank line.
Yeah, you told me that before.
And it's like
That sounds pretty
it's a
good.
tar coated twine, so it's like waterproof, water resistant.
Mm-hmm.
It's good up to 400 feet, and like you can get a big giant spool of it for like it's not expensive.
Yeah, it's cheap.
And I've been using it since I was a kid, and for camping and outdoor stuff and all that, and I just continue to use it. And it's what's really nice about it is you get black or red. I get the black; it's super thin, so it's like really stealthy, like out in the backyard and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
and that way when you have it up in parks and stuff, people can't see it, so it works really well.
Well, I got to tell you, my lawn guy, the guy who's taking out 3 runs of
Yeah, you can't
coax,
see it.
he was so I had an inverted V, and I had the V leg coming down, and I had it tied off to a chair, and then I had that piece of string, so it just went through the back of the chair and run over to a tree, and I forgot that I left it out there, and he came through on the riding mower, and whoop, he said it almost took his head off.
Yeah.
Obviously pulled my antenna down and everything, but I was like, got to be
Well,
gotta
that
be
guy's
careful with that.
he's messed you up quite a few times.
Yeah, so he got a little payback there.
Every time Abe tells us, "Hey, my antenna's acting weird," we're like, first thing we say now, just go out and check your coax and your radios and whatever, because it's probably that.
So to turn this
It's
into
all
the,
worked up.
yeah, to turn this into the outdoorsman show. So you take that bank line and you tie it to a hook with a big old piece of chicken or something like that on there and leave it on the bottom
Or
of
a
the,
yellow grasshopper.
yeah, leave it on the bottom of the pond, and then take the other end of that string and tie it to a milk jug with a cap on it. And that's good for catfishing. And they get a hold of that, and that milk jug keeps fighting them all day and tires them out. Hey, Donnie, thanks for joining, buddy. All right, so we talked about, but now we're on the feed line, and I think we've covered this. We're not going to go into deep, but coaxial cable,
it's-
RG8X.
You know, use the best feed line you can use, what you can afford, right? That's the
yeah,
best thing.
RG58 is super lossy stuff, but it's really, really
It's
common.
better than 316 though.
yeah,
Did you
it's
know that?
really common.
Right.
And,
Super easy to find.
Well, it was funny because I had a ton of it from CB days.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was getting back in the amateur radio, I go get my cable box out from under the stairs, and I've got a ton of RG58 in there. And I had no idea that, I mean, I knew there was different quality levels, but I really didn't know at that time what I know about coaxial cable these days. But I use RG58 for like winding up ununs, or balance, I should say, chokes and stuff like that. I still would recommend it.
That's right.
Nope.
Yeah.
Where it gets a little tricky is like balance and ununs, right? Transformers and chokes that you do want to put onto your antenna. It's actually really not that difficult. It's not that scary. Chuck and I both have a ton of different videos on how to wind
Yeah.
how to source. And we actually even sell kits through Coffee and Ham Radios where they come with all the parts that you need to build your own antennas. And that includes any balance or ununs that you would need to manufacture for that. But the first one you do is going to turn out terrible. Second one's going to be pretty bad. Third one's going to be all right. And then after that, they're going to be fine.
But they all work, right? I
Yeah.
mean, pretty much. I've seen some pretty seasoned hams not wrap very well.
Well, I've seen some
But
from
they
some
still work. But
YouTubers.
they still work. Yes,
Yeah, I've seen
I
some
would-
from some
I would-
YouTubers. I'm like, bro, you're a YouTuber, okay? You should have a little bit of dignity and respect for yours. You can't post a picture of that. I'm just kidding, but
Yeah.
yeah, man, if it works, it works. And it's just like any other skill or anything. Like the first time you rode a bicycle, you crashed it, right? So first time you make an antenna, it's going to have a problem.
But Abe and I both have
Easy to get over.
a couple of videos on how to make it look, how to wind it the way you wind it to make it look a lot, well, to make it tighter for one. And because when you do like some of the antennas, the magnet wire is fairly short, right? Like a 1-to-1 or Poseidon is pretty short. But when you do the Apollo, which is the in-fed half wave, there's a lot of wire. I think it's 51 inches of wire. And when you first start winding that thing, that stuff's going everywhere. You should wear glasses, safety glasses when you're doing it, because you never know where that wire is going. But if you watch our videos, and we kind of walk you through on how to make it look better than the average.
So I'm telling you, when I'm winding that 49-to-1, like you're saying, with that long piece of wire, like I'm holding it away, you got my eyes squinted and
You have to
everything.
see me when I'm winding and putting the packages.
I can only imagine. The Truth Serum. He says he is testing antennas right now, monopoles and dipoles. Well, that's awesome, man. Good luck with it.
Yep.
And what is this? It says Shane H5 is the way I'm going to read that.
H5.
He's saying, "Hi guys, love the practical talk. He lives in 2 acres, Royal Irish
nice.
site. Yeah, that's nice. No HOA, just wife. So that's only one difficult organization to deal with, the wife organization.
Mine can tell me how many antennas I have up at any time, and I don't think she even pays attention, but she still knows.
Right. He said he wants to know the direction of the slope of the end-fed half wave or random wire. Is it a problem with the unknown at house end of wire? So, like, typically for transformers, they like to be lower to the ground. If you raise them more than like 2 or 3 feet, you're going to have to adjust your antenna wire accordingly. With a random wire, you probably don't have to. Kathy's saying she sure can tell how many.
Man, is she here?
Yeah. With a random wire, you don't really necessarily need to adjust the length of it because they're non-resonant antennas anyway. And I've had them where I've had the antenna mounted at a second story window with the unknown in the window on the windowsill running down slope or towards the ground. Now, the end of the wire that doesn't have the transformer is going to be somewhat directional, but also the slope, you'll have RF coming off the backside of that slope as well. So slope and the antennas are directional depending upon how you have them pointed. What I would do is mount them in a straight line if you can, at around a 45-degree angle if you can, and no zigzags if you can. If you can't, mount it however you can and see how it works for you.
And if you have to mount it higher, tune it higher. Tune it.
Yeah.
What I always tell people is tune your antenna the way you're going to set it up when you take it out, because it's most likely going to work. If you go 25 feet in the air with your dipole, tune it at 25 feet. And
Yeah,
you
for
probably
sure.
have better luck when you take it different places, because the ground you're over sometimes is going to make a difference. And if you're doing a dipole, you can move those ends in and out, and that will tune it some. So if you're just a little off, you might be able to tune it by just making it wider or narrower.
Yeah, it's a great point, Chuck. And like with like a 10 or even a 20-meter dipole, a few feet higher or lower can make a huge difference in your SWR.
And you're just making that so your radio's happy, really. I mean,
Yeah,
better-
and so
the
the
lower the
next
better.
thing, the next thing we have on here is support structures, like masts, poles, trees, buildings to elevate the antenna. I like to use a single mast, and you get a lot of stuff out of a single mast. You can do a vertical antenna, you can do sloping antennas, you can do inverted V antennas. Chuck was just talking a little bit about an inverted V. When you have a horizontal antenna, it radiates one way. If you start to bring it into an inverted V, it starts to act more like a vertical, so it's mono. I'm sorry. It all directions. It's equally strong in all directions. When you have a horizontal, they tend to be a little bit directional off of the long side or broad side of the antenna.
Right. Right.
But you
And
like
that's
that too, right? You're a single mast guy.
Yeah, my doublet at home is like 40 feet at one end and 30 feet at the other, and pretty flat. But that's something that's up all the time. If I'm out doing portable stuff, an inverted V's usually one of the easier ones to put up, or a sloper, off of a single mast is real easy, like an end-fed half wave.
So when you do an inverted V, you kind of have more wire in the air than you do with a sloper. It's kind of hard to argue that without breaking out the protractor and stuff. But a lot of times folks will have these shorter masts. And when I say shorter mast, I'm talking 7 meters and less. Like some people do 6 meters, 5 meter masts. When you do that with a sloper, it will work, but you are so low to the ground and your ground losses are going to be pretty high. I just would do an inverted V in a situation like that. It just gives you more wire, more current higher up in the air than you do with a sloper. But
They say the inverted V on a end-fed half wave, which is I hardly ever run it that way, but they actually say that you get your best output in the middle of the radio of the antenna.
Yeah.
So that does give you your highest point. When I do an end-fed half wave, I just slope it. I'll tell you what, I took mine to Quartzsite last year, my Apollo, and some lady walks by. She goes, your antenna's higher than everybody else's here. I have my 12-meter spider beam, and it had in these, like, I got all cut up. I put it in this tree. It had thorns everywhere. And then I brought it over to my trailer. I took the bungee cords with the little balls on them.
like a bongo tie, is that what they call those things?
Like a bongo tie. So I have these points on where I can hang solar panels off of my trailer. It's like a little eye bolt. I ran the bongo tie through that, put my wire through there, and then just dropped the end of my antenna around the ground. And that thing worked so good. I mean, partly because it was high in my SWR. I mean, I was almost good enough on 17 and 12 to use it without even trying to tune it.
No, that's awesome. So the biggest mast I have is the 10 meter from, no, I take that back. Well, I have two 10 meters. I have the one from Gigaparts, the fiberglass one, and then I've got the Spider Beam. Although Spider Beam has like a 12 that I'm so super tempted.
That's what I have, the 12.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
It's huge. It's not portable though. It's something like when I take my trailer down to Quartzsite or something, I've got plenty of room to store stuff, You wouldn't believe the stuff I take to Quartzsite. Man, I've taken not a lot compared to some of the people down there, but I have a bunch of like the EMT conduit and stuff, just 10-foot sections of it that all fits together, and I can pretty much set up whatever I feel like having.
Well, see, like that's what I like about it. I take the single mast and I take a bucket of freaking wire, cable, bungee cords, all that stuff, and then hopefully there's something there, right? Like sometimes you can mount an antenna a little bit higher up on a porch, and then run it down to a fence or you know what I'm saying, or a gate. Sometimes there's trees, sometimes there's structure there that you can attach to. So you really the more you put them up, the more creative that you get.
So when I went to Pacificon with Josh's Facebook group and stuff, when he did this years ago, that's before I ever started doing stuff, I took a doublet with me, with what most people would call the speaker wire antenna, but it was a doublet basically. But I actually used silicone wire. And I did what you're saying. I had a tree, and I'm like, I want to put this pole up in the tree. And I tied the pole off to the tree. So I was about like 6 more feet in the air. And I had, a 20-foot. So I was like 25 or 26 feet in the air. We had 15 people there, and I bet you at least 10 of them got all their contacts off my antenna because it worked so well.
Well, it was funny because I remember when you went to that, and folks were like, this guy Chuck was there, and he was set up and making contacts before we were even unpacked.
Yeah, I was the last guy on the hill.
But I was like, I know him from somewhere. Anyhow, our buddy Big John has taken his life in his hands to watch the show. He says he's driving home from Mexican dinners, what he had, and his wife is driving. So he's actually riding home while his wife is driving because he wanted to watch. Lord, be safe, brother. Letting the wife drive is a bold, bold move.
Is it nighttime? My wife will not drive at night. Kathy's like,
Right.
"Are you driving at night?"
It's only
But you know
something
what
I
she
would do
does?
in extreme emergency.
You know what she does, and it sounds really good. When I'm not on the show and you guys are doing it, and we're driving down the road, she hooks it into her car stereo, and you guys sound amazing.
Well, I know I do, but the thing is,
Well,
like,
even Jim sounded good.
damn, must be a nice sound system. So like, I've done that like when we're driving places and I'm out on the weekend and I hear you guys and I get so worked up because I want to say something or comment, and I can't because I'm driving. But
I'm telling her, say this, and she always tones it down though.
or she says, Chuck, that's rude. I'll
The
be nice
voice
about
of
it.
reason is what we call the wives. The voice of reason. Where
So
we at?
we got hardware. We got rope, pulleys, cable ties, weatherproofing materials like electrical tape and sealant. Out of all that, one
What's
thing
the
I'll say,
tape?
I put electrical tape, but the thing is that buy good electrical tape.
I
People are
was
like,
going to
ain't
tell
no
you what it
difference.
is. The
I get
Scotch
the-
brand,
Scotch or 3M's the way to go.
33. I can't even read this. I need some glasses.
But yeah,
here.
Scotch or 3M. All the other stuff is just
It's
not
got the
worth
yellow inside.
it. Yeah.
It's what is this? This is 33 plus is. There's another one that's really good too. I do buy some cheap stuff once in a while just to waste when I'm messing with antennas.
Well, I've got this right here. I shouldn't even show it, but it's called Authentic DNYX. But I think this came with free with something that I bought. Like sometimes it'll be like, oh, here's a free roll of. But
And
for
this is
outside,
not- This
get
is
the good
not.
stuff.
This is not the paracorder's not the best thing you can use to tie up stuff with because it'll wear. The weather will go through it. Don't buy red. Red's like one of the worst colors.
What did they say? Masterant, right? Is the stuff to use?
The Masterant is really good.
Yeah, the Masterant, but that Masterant is not cheap. But I've had
Stuff right here.
I've had my antenna out back, the
This is tiny.
10-meter gigaparts mast.
Mm-hmm.
It's been guyed up there with the same paracord for probably close to 5 years now. It's at least 4,
Oh yeah,
and it's
paracord.
fine. Yeah, and it's fine. Everybody's like,
I've got the
the
Dacron
UV's
stuff.
gonna eat that boy, and the weather, and the bugs, and the critters, and it's fine.
Yeah, I am saying the red for some reason is not the best. If you look at a lot of cars, the red fade's like the worst most of the time, right?
Yeah.
And I guess it
Well-
doesn't have the same UV. I don't know.
Hot
Look at
damn,
there,
John.
there's John.
Thank you, buddy, for becoming a member.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see what else we got on here. So,
Oh, go back to that again. See what else you had there. Oh, you had pulleys on there. Yeah, pulleys. A good pulley is, I mean, if you're putting your antennas up, a lot of times it's good to put them on pulleys, and then you can weight them or bungee cord them if you're hooking to trees and stuff, and that
That's
gives
way-
that will help your wire from stretching. Ape has a lot of problems with his wire stretching when he uses that aluminum wire.
I do. So I got to tell you, the what I do typically though is I'll put like a 3 or 4 foot piece of kayak bungee. I don't know what it's really called, but it's like bungee cord that you see on kayaks.
Right.
So it's UV resistant, and you can get it in like 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch diameters, and I think I get 1/2 inch. And
big stuff.
it's UV protected. I don't know if I said that or not. And it works great. So like at the end of the element, I usually put this on there. So if I'm mounted to a tree or something that moves or sways in the wind, it's that bungee cord that deals with
you
that.
you see my Tide bottles that I use for portable
I love
light to
them.
hold the ends out.
Yeah, it's like the best idea.
I've got like a 1 or 2 foot piece of bungee on each one of those. The real thin stuff because it doesn't
you can
stay
pour-
out all the time.
You can pour beer in those Tide bottles, and nobody would
You
even
can. Nobody would know
know.
until later.
Yeah, you were saying like I did have an antenna. It was about 65 feet. It was an end-fed half wave that was made with aluminum wire. And I mean, when I would at the summertime, when I would go out and tune at the beginning, the end of summer,
Yep.
and I would cut like a foot easy off of that thing, and it would still be fine. But all in all, over the couple of years that I had it out there, I probably cut 3 or 4 feet off of it. It was crazy.
The aluminum stuff. I like using the aluminum. I built my own DX Commander just by looking at pictures, and then I bought one, and I have to tell you, mine's like dead on, pretty close. But I used, and I have both. By using the aluminum wire for my ground radios, it saves quite quite a bit of weight when you have a lot of wire on the ground.
I'll bet.
So I do like it for that, and it's pretty cheap. I mean, you buy a 100-foot roll and you have 200 feet, right? Because there's 2 rows.
Well, like I use the cheap wire a lot because I do a lot of testing or prototype stuff.
Right.
And when you start talking about like some of the really good wire, like the antenna wire from like the Wireman and stuff like that, that stuff's expensive. And
It is.
you know, it's the difference between cutting an end-fed half wave at $2 for the wire or $20 for the wire. So if you want to make an antenna, mount it, see how it performs and all that stuff, and then upgrade the wire at some point in time, I don't see a real big problem there.
But remember that your velocity factor may be different, so always start
It's
long.
100%. So never assume that it's going to be the exact same.
Our silicone wire for the antenna kits, what I say, a foot and a half
Shorter, right?
than some wire, which is kind of
Yeah.
nice. Oh, and we were talking about the inverted V versus the sloper. Your inverted V will save you space too, if you think about it. If you don't have a lot of room,
Yeah. Well, and single
your
mount
antenna
point
up.
too, right?
right?
Um,
I don't think we said that earlier.
Daz is saying he uses the self-amalgamating tape, and that stuff is really good. So glad to hear you never had any water problems with it.
I did all that on my all my stuff on my tower has that, and then it has that 33 plus over the top of it because the
Somewhere around
amalgamated
here,
tape doesn't last the UVs. I don't think, if I remember right.
Somewhere around here, I've got a jar of liquid electrical tape.
I do too. I can show you that.
And that stuff is stickier than freaking glue, and I get it everywhere whenever I open it up, and it smells the high heavy. Yeah, that's it. And that's my
don't
jar. How'd you
put-
get it?
And don't get it on your brand new tactical pants because
It ain't coming off ever.
well, I got it off, but it's still stained. Of course, they weren't black tactical pants, of course.
So I got a few different antenna types up here, and you know, when I got into antennas, the OMs would tell me, son, you need to build yourself a dipole antenna. They're easy to build. They get out great. There's easy, simple antenna. And I'm like, yeah, bro, but I want something cool. And dipole antennas aren't cool. So we have dipole antennas is one of the simplest, most effective antennas. It's 2 equal lengths of wire connected at the center, forming a straight line, unless you do an inverted V. Some people mount them as slopers, and some people even mount them as verticals too. It's easy to figure out. So the total length in feet is equal to 468 divided by frequency. Then you have to adjust for velocity factor. You divide that answer by 2, and you get the length of each side of your coax. You feed them at the center with coaxial cable or ladder line. In installation, they can be hung horizontally between 2 support points or configured as an inverted V like we talked about with a single center point. And they perform excessively well for single band, single frequency. Super simple to build and super simple to put up. So like when you hear people saying things like, hey, 10's hot right now, it is with the solar minimum. You know, make a 10-meter dipole. I think you're talking about like less than 20 feet of wire, right? And you don't have to get it very high up in the air, like 15, 16 feet. And you'd be shocked at how well it performs compared to using an end-fed half wave cut for 40 that happens to have some resonance-like behaviors on 10 meters.
Well, 10 is actually one that you can probably get up enough to make it more directional too, flat. I've made them out of conduit, guys, and they pretty much rock.
So they're saying on here, asking, what do you wrap up with the tape? The coax ends. So like where your adapters and connectors are is what I
Especially
wrap up.
for permanent stuff.
Yeah, a lot of people wrap up all kinds of stuff, but that's really what I concern myself with. But dipole antennas perform great. They're easy to build. I'd encourage everybody to, if you had the space, I'd put multiples up. But try it. You might like it.
The dipole is probably one of your best wire antennas you can make. I mean, as far as just a single band or single wire antenna, like you can make better with hex beams or something like that, or Moxons, you know. But when you're talking just a single wire, it's hard to beat a dipole. Which, to tell you the truth, a hex beam and a Moxon are basically
They're all dipoles.
They're dipoles with a reflector, right?
Right.
And you go from 0 to 6, you know, or 5.5 or something like that for the gain.
So you might wonder why I put inverted V differently in here. And the reason I did is because you mostly will see dipoles mounted as an inverted V. And I think as Chuck and I both said, that's something that we are advocate, right? We think it's a good idea. But I think we mentioned earlier that you can do things like a random wire antenna or an end-fed half wave, and you can mount it as an inverted V. And I've even done off-center fed dipoles as inverted Vs, kind of like an inverted V. But the big advantage, and again, here's my chopsticks for my lunch, but if inverted V really is when you have your antenna mounted like this, and then you can adjust your SWR and radiation pattern by adjusting the more acute or obtuse your angle is. The one thing I would say is I wouldn't go beyond 90 degrees. So once you're at 90 degrees, I wouldn't go much tighter than that unless you had to, but by choice.
Less.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to be like 110, 120,
Yeah.
130.
But the big advantage that I have here is it requires only one high support point, and it performs pretty well, not even at that great of a height. So even if you have a single mast, you go out to do your portable POTA, SOTA, Walmart on the air, whatever activation that you're doing, and you don't have a dipole, have an end-fed, try it as an inverted V, and you might get surprised. And then I have just the leg should be 90 degrees for optimal performance. I think we beat that dog to death. I don't know if anybody's got any questions. You can put them in the comments. It's easier if you put all caps the word question at the beginning. Chuck and I our eyes are running on legacy hardware at this point, and have a little trouble seeing that. John's saying off-center fed dipoles are good antennas too. I love them. I love off-center fed dipoles. So the next one is the end-fed half wave, and these are super duper popular antennas right now because you can get so many different bands without a tuner with the end-fed half wave. So it's a half wave length of wire fed from one end. Suitable for multiple bands with the use of an impedance matching transformer. And so we use an unknown on those. And like for the Apollo, the one that we sell, we use a 49-to-1 impedance matching unit. So let's go back to the chopstick example. When you have your two pieces of wire and they're connected to the end and you feed them in the center right where the connection is, you typically have around 50 to 75 ohms of impedance depending upon your height above ground. The more you move this, like so if you have just one wire and you feed it at the end, you have more impedance there because you have fluctuations in current and voltage. And when you think about Ohm's law, when you have those, you have more resistance. The word impedance is resistance for AC. So just think about it as resistance. And it goes up the more off-center your feed point is. All the way at the end, you're looking at around 2,500 to 3,600 ohms of impedance, depending upon the length of your wire. And you put a transformer on the end of that with a counterpoise. It's really a simple antenna to build with your 49-to-1 and get your end-fed half wave. I typically will cut mine so they're resonant on the 40 meter band, which is around 66 feet. When I do that, that gives me near resonant points on 40 meters, 20 meters, 15 meters, and 10 meters. And I can get all of those bands without using an antenna tuner, which is super duper handy. I can also get bands like 12 meters, 15, 17 with the use of a tuner, which makes it even more handy. And ham radio operators are lazy. We like to get as many bands out of one antenna with little physical effort used in order to make any changes. And that's why these are so popular.
Right.
A lot of the experienced hams don't like them. And they say that by changing the band that you're operating on, you change the radiation pattern coming off of the antenna and it becomes unpredictable. But I don't really care.
Yeah, you're making contacts, right?
Right.
Does it matter where you're making your contacts?
No.
I know my buddy who taught me pretty much what I know is, and he always used to call my end-fed half wave the half antenna. I go, no,
Right.
it's a full half wave. It's not a half.
It's still a half, boy.
Still a whole half wave.
So EMAC YouTube 2 is saying if you only had 10 watts, what multi-band antenna would you guys recommend? What do you say, Chuck?
It's hard to say. What other equipment do you have? If you have a tuner, especially like a manual tuner or a good automatic tuner, I'd do a doublet. If you only had one antenna, because you have way less loss because you're not using coax. That's my
what they
main
did back in
lower
the day,
band
right?
antenna is a doublet. I've got a doublet for It's 110 feet and it's good for 80 to 6. I don't use it on 6, 10, 15, 20. What else? And like 2 meter and stuff. I have all that stuff in the Aggies. I have a tri-bander, so I have 10, 15, and 20, so I don't really use it for that, but every once in a while, it'll surprise you how well the wire antenna will do compared to the other ones. Sometimes it
I'd
doesn't
say
matter.
I'd say you want like an end-fed half wave or an end-fed random wire,
Yeah.
and you need
But
a
if you only
tuner
have
with
10 watts and you want your best power, a double it.
or a dipole, right?
Well, and that's all a double it is, the dipole. It's fed.
Well, when I
with it,
say
right?
dipole, I'm talking about like a link dipole, though.
Yeah, or a fan dipole is a really good if you want multiple bands and you got the time and you want to put the effort into tuning one. A fan dipole is a pretty good antenna for a single antenna because now you have 3 or 4 bands that are tuned, and it's a dipole, and get it as high as you can get it.
So I'm going to commit some heresy here. Shane's saying you want coax, a counterpoise or coax with a choke before the transceiver. You should use a choke at both ends of your coax, regardless if you're using a counterpoise or not. And you should definitely use a counterpoise. And I am stunned by the number of YouTube ham experts that still tell people that they don't need to use a counterpoise when using off-center fed antennas. And that off-center fed is a off-center fed dipole all the way down to random wires and end-fed half waves and all that stuff. The thing is your counterpoise or your radio plane, they act in a capacitive nature so that your AC current can go both directions through your circuit, which happens to be your antenna. When you use your coaxial cable as a counterpoise, it's really an earth ground, and any current that goes in there is seeing a resistive, not a capacitive load. It's pretty simple stuff if you actually read the books, and I'm not shaming anybody for not reading them. I'm 100% shaming people who advise people and haven't read them. The thing is that we use the term ground interchangeably. So we'll say, oh, that's the negative side of the antenna. That's the ground side of the antenna. Oh, your coax is grounded to earth. But when you look at it from a circuit standpoint and you look at something that is going to act as a giant capacitor versus acting towards a resistive load to ground, they behave differently. And you should 100% use a counterpoise. Anybody who says, hey, I used this antenna and I got all these contacts and I didn't use a counterpoise, got them in spite of using a counterpoise, not because they didn't, right? And just use a counterpoise. It's super simple and it's the right way to do it. Whew, that's a lot. And, there was this one guy, and I definitely won't call him out because he's an older guy and he's nice, but he was saying that it wasn't you, Chuck. He was saying not to use the counterpoise. And then he goes up and pulls up an article to justify his point. And in the article, the guy claims that using the counterpoise is the best way to go. So just use the damn counterpoise.
I don't always use it with my infed. Depends on how I feel.
Shame on you, Chuck. I don't want to hear it. Because that coaxial cable becomes part of your, it'll radiate. It'll mess with your signal to noise ratio. I know, but it still gets through. Don't do it. And I'm not a fan of the Magic Carpet either. I don't know that that's another.
And we're talking about chokes. I'm a fan of the chokes on the coax now. And I'll tell you why. That thing is made, well, most chokes will take, because they're what, a 1-to-1, so there's not really a whole lot going on there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it'll take more power, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I for my, I'm doing some little QRP antennas right now that I'm not putting a choke on the antenna, but I'm going to suggest that you use a choke at the antenna, or at least 10 feet from the antenna or something like that,
Well, people say to do that so that you can use the part of your coaxial cable as your ground. But again, you're looking at a resistive ground. You're not looking at a capacitive ground, and it's a waste of power.
But what I'm trying to do is get just this little piece of thing, this holds the dipole, and it's made to go right on top of your 6 meter pole. And now I've taken the weight off of the top of that little bitty pole. And that's why I'm saying use it on the cable, because you can run it down the cable a little ways and you can tie it to your mast, and it won't take the tip and just bend it over, right?
Yeah, I've got an idea for that, Chuck, and I meant to tell you about it, but I forgot. But I'll tell you offline because I don't want anybody stealing it and making a video.
Don't steal it. Yeah. So look me up at Pacificon. I'm going to have a few of these, and they've got a little I don't know. Should I say what they have? What I'm doing?
We'll have to do a separate show on the magic carpet and why I'm not a fan, because that's a long one.
Oh, man, I'm missing it over here.
But I have gone on
So-
magic carpet rants on other live streams in case you're wondering.
So I did a video the other day about I'm tested 2 antennas, and basically I'm kind of letting it out now. The antenna has like a magnet, and it's always like when you wind your portable antenna, it just snaps on there, and
I love it.
it does not affect, at least not it doesn't affect the SWR at all. And my good buddy Ziggy says that it should be no effect at all.
Well,
So-
you got to keep an eye on him. He is from Florida,
That's true.
right? I mean, they're crazy down there.
So I'm going to have a few of those if you guys are interested. I don't even know how much I'm going to charge for them yet, but
well, we're thinking about getting them done up with the spray powdered whatever it is the nylon.
yeah, but I'm going to throw a few out there this weekend, I think, and just see how they, and maybe ask people to get back to me and see how they work.
Nice.
They're pretty
So
cool.
put on here loop antennas, because loop antennas are wire antennas. Now there's one thing called a big old loop antenna. People call them sky loops. They'll call them delta loops. They'll call them
Well, Delta looks a little different.
rhombic loops. That's different than a small magnetic loop. Those are different types of antennas. We're talking about non-magnetic loop antennas.
Some of them are random, right? The big
Yeah.
sky loop ones, and the Delta loops though can be per band, and they work really well. And you can stack them just like a Yagi, kind of like.
Well, we were trying to figure out a multi-banded delta loop, even if we could only get a few bands on it, and that is
Yeah.
not an easy thing to do.
It's really, yeah. I've got a couple of them here at the house here that we've already played with, and
But it ain't easy.
I just wasn't super happy with them right off the bat. But we're gonna play with them some more when I get more time, because we like to offer something like that. But it all depends on your mast and stuff, and we don't sell a mast. We do recommend either Spider Beams or DX Commander. DX Commander, I'm telling you guys, he sells the same mast as like 2 or 3 other companies, and his is the best price.
Plus, he's a great guy, right? So if you have
He
a
is.
problem,
He's cool.
it's
got that
easy.
accent
It's
too,
easy to
man.
get a hold of him and say, "Hey, bro, my antenna busted." Some of these other companies will give you a million reasons that they can't help you out, and
Oh, we get the bazooka antenna down there too. I've never done one of those.
well, that's the antenna. It's like a folded dipole, right?
It's made with coax, right?
Oh, right. I
Which
might
is
be
the thing that
configuring
always-
I'm thinking a Cobra antenna.
The Cobra is the folded ones where that goes back and forth. So you
Right.
take it's basically a doublet that's way shorter because in length, it's not shorter, but it's shorter in length that you have to set up. And it gets you the same bands that way. It's,
here
it's
it
an
is.
interesting concept.
In your guys' view, is the Chameleon 5-to-1 matching unit lossy? The answer is yes. It's a piece of shit.
It's really
And I
awesome.
really don't want to trash or hammer on antenna manufacturers. But when you look at price for performance and what you actually get for your money, they're not a good side of the equation.
buy a piece of wire.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, look that antenna up and for problems and just
Well,
the
look at the
best
number of
stores on
people
it.
who've actually cut them open on YouTube, and it's probably all the answer that you need.
The
And
guy
I'm not
that
trying to start a big fight with them or not, but I just wouldn't. No, I
the
can't.
guy
get
that
behind
originally designed that 5-to-1 went away from it because it was so lossy. He went to a 4-to-1. I did a lot of reading on it back when I first looked into their stuff. I've got one. I don't use it that much. I mean,
right, most people.
watch my video on it and see how it compares to a dipole. Actually, that's what you should do. If you want to answer, watch my video.
Well, what I can tell you is take a look at what we do with the Poseidon antenna. So it's a vertical antenna, it's a 25-foot element. You could use a whip. We use a wire. We use 4 ground planes, and listen to the stuff that people are saying about how well that antenna works. And it's a kid.
One guy said
it's
it's the best one at
Yeah.
at his
and it's a kid.
club's
What do we charge? $80 for
Field day.
$80 for the kid.
85, I think.
And
But you still need either a tree or a mast. A
right.
25-foot mast. I want to sell a mast for it, but we haven't found one yet. I want to sell a 8 meter or so.
Well, Charlie's asking
That's
some hard
small.
hitting questions. He
Who
he
is
says, "What is
Charlie guy?
loading coils versus linear loading?" So
The
coils are lossy. I think we were talking about that yesterday.
So basically, what was the antenna we talked about the doublet that's shorter. That's linear loading, is what that is.
Yeah, like the Cobra antenna.
It's probably a little better. I don't know. I've never tested the two. That would be an interesting test because there's so many factors there though. If you're using a coil and you're using a 17-foot extendable whip on top of that, is that fair to be equal to a 80-meter dipole that's linear loaded? I mean,
Yeah, I haven't used enough linear loaded antennas to be able to answer that, so I apologize.
If you're into that impasse, look up impasse or mfail.
Yeah,
and watch that video.
So he's saying, is it a 4-to-1 now? No, they still use a 5-to-1.
They still use it. They're not the ones that invented that. It was a ham over in the UK, I think, that invented that 5-to-1 setup that they use. There's quite the drama around that too.
So I think we've talked about all the different wire antennas I have on the list, but I have random wire. It's a non-resonant length of wire used with an antenna tuner. I think we've covered this in conversation earlier. And if you have questions, you can reach out to either Chuck or I on either of our channels. We both, for everything that we put up here except loop antennas, we have tons of videos that cover the measurements, the building construction techniques, and even testing cores.
If you're looking at something like that, what was it, the impasse?
Mm-hmm.
Look at our antenna. And not to be touting our stuff, but it's instead of 17 foot. If you do the lightweight, it's 17 foot versus we use 25 feet. So right there, you're a little bit better. You might do. I mean, the bigger, extendable mast or extendable whip is probably it's thicker, so you get more range on that. But for the cost, for $500 versus, I mean, if you buy the kit, $500 versus $89, I bet ours will outdo it. In fact, I'm going to do a test eventually one of these days. I don't want to bang on them, but I won't tell you what it is, but I'll be testing it something.
Well, the thing is like when you start looking at so a lot of people are really excited over this aluminum collapsible whip that's 25 feet long. That is just asking to get bent. You know what I mean? Like
25 feet's a lot.
It is a heck of a lot. And like people, you don't realize how long a 17-foot whip is until you have one fully extended. 25, man. It's one slight mess up and that thing is bent and it's never getting collapsed again. And I'm just going to tell you, I wouldn't do it.
Mary asked about a tri-band. Now, are you talking vertical or I think I do have a video on the one I mentioned earlier, the fan dipole, which is a tri-band. I think it was tri-band. We were looking into bringing one of those out.
And I probably bitched and said not to do it, right?
You did. It's a great antenna. Oh, she's talking vertical. Our Poseidon is a vertical. Just so if you don't know anything about it, but it's a vertical you have to tune with a tuner. Your internal tuner will tune. My Yaesus have tuned 80 to 6 with no problem. I think if I remember, I checked 2 meters and it was actually not bad for there either. But I didn't tune that. I don't have a way of tuning that.
And you need a tuner with that antenna.
Yeah, but you do need a tuner with it. Now, if you're talking tri-band, the QRP guys came out with a tri-band antenna, didn't they? A vertical, but it was QRP. I'm sure you could take that if you're looking for something like that. You could probably take that design and just beef it up. I forget. It's been a long time since I looked at that antenna, but interesting. It was interesting, and I think you could probably redesign it for 100 200 watts or something like that. I forget how it was made, to tell you the truth. But that's one you can go look at, Mary, if you're looking.
So we only got a few minutes left, and if we didn't get to your question in the chat, I apologize. So for building antennas, you really what you want to do is you want to plan first. right? And part of that is figuring out what frequencies you want to operate on. That's going to limit or change which types of antennas you're going to look at.
Mhm.
Figure out how big this thing's going to be, because you think that you might have 50 feet, 60 feet, 100 feet out in the backyard. You might not, right? And so you want to figure out how big the antenna is going to be, and then go out and see if it's actually going to fit before you start buying, cutting, designing, and all that. Because I've definitely been in a pickle where I've gone out to put up an antenna and been like, Jesus, I don't have the space to do this. Now it's going to have to get extra creative, and maybe the neighbor won't notice I'm cutting into his yard. And then select your location, find the suitable location for the support points, and just kind of sketch it out. I know that sounds nerdy, but grab a pencil and a paper and kind of draw it out and see how you're going to shoehorn it into your space. Here's cutting the wire. Measure carefully and make sure you cut the wire to the calculated lengths. I always cut my stuff too long, and then that way I can make adjustments as I'm putting the antenna up out in the yard. It's a lot easier to cut a foot off than add a foot on. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Now, if you look at when you start looking at this is what I've started doing, which ends up being more wire. But look at the lower part of the band. If you're going to like West Mountain has a calculator, go to the lower part of the band, especially if you want to be up in the higher part of the band, because that will make it'll only be a few inches, but 5 inches might make a difference. And then different types of wire, like we're talking earlier, will be different lengths for the same band. Our silicone wire tends to be a little shorter than most other, what's a PVC brand, like a PVC outer. And it's the, what do they call it?
The insulation, right? Is what you're talking?
Yeah, but with the velocity factor.
Right.
So if you know the velocity factor of your wire, you can probably get pretty darn close. Like if it tells you it's 98%, then you can, take your length and, multiply it times 9.98, and that'll give you a pretty close approximation. But it's always better to make it long and then don't cut fold, right? When you're tuning.
Right.
And when you get to a piece that's, I'm trying to get in the camera here. When you get a piece that's 6 or 8 inches long, then start cutting a little bit off if you're already in, but check it before you move it, because by cutting that, say you have 8 inches and you cut 6 off, because you're already closer to where you want to be, it will change.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. And then when you start getting close, an inch, half an inch to an inch at a time, depending on the band. Some bands you can do more. There's a good question in there for you, I saw.
Yeah, Taryn saying that he feels...
Taryn's
saying that sometimes he feels like buying an antenna would take the fun out of the hobby. And different people do things differently for different reasons. I got to tell you, I bought an Ed Fong J-pole, and I use it for my 2-meter radio. I bought it like 5 years ago, and the thing's awesome. And I'm 100% fine and okay with that purchase. When it comes to messing around with the HF antennas, I really do like to build my own antennas. Not that I wouldn't do that for UHF and VHF and all that. But, some people buy, some people build. Kit building is a great way to learn more about how to actually build your own antennas from scratch, designing from scratch. And like the progression typically is, hey, I bought an antenna, it doesn't perform well, so I need to learn to modify it. Then the next thing people do is they start buying kits and they follow those instructions. The next thing they'll do is that they'll buy parts and follow or copycat other people's build instructions, and then graduate onto full-blown antenna design on their own. So it's a progressive thing that, some people, they do it in a year. Some people take 10 years to do it. Some people never get to designing their own antenna, but it's definitely fun. I love doing it.
I was looking at this tri-bander that Mary was asking about, and it's a 40, 30, and 20. I don't ever do 30, so I would probably make mine 40, 20.
I like 30 10. Though. For FT8, 30 can be pretty good.
Well, yeah, that's true. I don't do a lot of FT8 though. But
I have no idea what the Ultimax 100 is. Chuck, do you know what that is?
It kind of sounds familiar. Ultimax 100.
And then it looks like somebody asked a question about mixes, but it looks like Hollywood's got it taken care of.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm seeing the Ultimax 100 as being a rifle, but oh no, it
looks like Jerry's got us on a technicality. It's not a single mount point. You damn dirty ape. You're right. You got me, Jerry. Internet points for you, bud.
Oh, the Ultimax is an in-fed. It's a 80 to 6 in-fed half wave. No,
Yeah,
it says
I just
in-fed.
don't know anything about it though.
I don't know. I've never heard of it before. It looks similar to my antennas. If you're
Hey,
looking
look at
for a
this.
pre-built antenna, my antennas is
What's up to you?
might be one of the places. So Hollywood got that because I saw that and that was a question for you for sure.
And well, Hollywood's a smart guy. So building the antennas. This is the last slide because we're running out of time. Let's hurry up and hammer this one out.
This is perfect right here too.
Made a 10 meter vertical dipole with a good friend who's a tech. It was much fun. Had by all. That's awesome, man.
Yeah,
Go out and have some fun.
that's awesome.
All right, so what we have here is assembling the antenna. Attach insulators. Secure the insulators at the end and at the center if applicable. Prepare the feed point. Connect the feed line to the antenna elements for dipoles. This is at the center. For end feds, it's at one end. And treat that with any water protection stuff that you're going to want to do before you get it up in the air. And install your balun on installing the antenna. Put your supports up. Chuck was talking about using those eyelet things on his trailer, and we talked about using trees and guying things off. Make sure that what you put up is safe and secure and will resist things like wind, heavy wind from storms and tornadoes and hurricanes and all that stuff. And don't be anywhere near any electrical or power lines or anything like that. That's the last thing that you want. Hoist the antenna into position, ensuring it's clear of obstacles, and then anchor the ends with rope and tie on the insulators, and then test it out. Test it out with an SWR meter at first, not just an SWR meter, but an antenna analyzer. There's a bunch of different ones on the market. We're not going to get into that right now. But what you want to do is you want to test it out before you hook your radio up and make sure everything works. And then once you do that, then hook up your radio and have fun. You got anything you want to add there, Chuck?
I was just looking at something. Somebody wanted to send me a snowblower. I live in California, dude.
Right.
We have snow here, but just not where I live.
Well, you know how they say that you can turn. I better not tell the joke. It's really off color. I'm not going to say it.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
Get me in Discord and I'll tell you there.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about earlier. I was talking about if you guys I use milk jugs for a while for the end of my antennas, but they break too easy. Keep your wife's or yours, whoever does the laundry.
Chuck don't do no laundry in his house.
I actually do laundry, but grab the I call it my wife's tide, but grab the bottles that your liquid soap comes in and clean them out. I mean, you're not going to get the soap out very easy, but and then fill it with water. Put a little bit of line on the end of it, and then put a little bit of bungee cord, and that makes it really good. Because a lot of these places don't want you to put stakes in the ground. I think it's because they probably don't want you to hit your their sprinklers or something. But if they put in sprinklers correctly, they should be deep enough, especially if it's cold where you live. Jeff says the Poseidon is next. Poseidon isn't. I mean, I can't believe how well that antenna works for what it is. To tell you the truth, because I equate it to kind of like we were talking about the other antenna by manufacturer.
Yeah, we did a good job with that Poseidon. I love it. Love that antenna.
And we just basically came. I had this Toroid, and Abe goes, "We can't put that in." I go, "Well, let's try it." And
that's my first reaction to everything.
It is, but he tested it. He tested those versus what you were really supposed to use in that type of antenna, and it was more efficient than what people were using already.
So I had people who watched my channel for years, love your videos, learn so much about testing toroids and NOV-8, all that, and then when we started using those cores, they're like, "I will never watch another one of your videos again." I'm like, okay. I mean, I'm okay breaking up. It's me, not you. I get it, but there was a lot of drama around that, but I got to tell you, I absolutely love that antenna. I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's becoming my favorite for camping.
It's so easy.
Motorhome out because it doesn't take up any space. I use a mast mount where I put, depending on size of the mast. Well, for that one, I use a big stake that I just put my DX Commander pole right over the top of it and lift it up as high as I need it. I'm going to play with it. I've got a couple things I'm going to play with it because I took it on a motorcycle trip and I laid this thing out horizontal. And I was picking up guys that I talked to in the San Diego area, and they were S9 plus 20 or 30 on 40, which is probably not the best band for that antenna. But by laying horizontal, I think I'm gonna test it because I've got guys that I talk to all the time. They know my signals. If I do it at home here, I can test it to my doublet, and I know my doublet's really good on 40. I'm gonna see how that thing compares because it might. I mean, I only had it 5 feet off the ground.
We need to get.
I was just showing my buddies. Yeah, we got to do the Chronos too. Jim asked me the other day about that because I got all these boxes. I was going to see if they would fit in those boxes you had sent to me already.
I don't think they will, but
I think they're too big for that one. It'd be nice because I did one up already, and I put. I think they're called monkey clamps or something like that. They're rubber clamps. They're made for putting like shovels on a wall or something.
I know what you're talking about.
And it clamps so you don't even have to latch it, and it clamps over my mast so well, and that's what holds the bottom of it.
I just used
that one more than my portable one.
I just used a piece of Velcro.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to hit the button. Thank you, everybody. Much appreciated. Hope you had a good time.
Yeah, had a good crowd tonight.
Yeah, we'll catch up and talk to everybody later on.
Thanks, everybody.
I hit the button, and now